The Galactic Empire had endured for millennia, a machine of worlds and fleets that crushed rebellion as easily as dust underfoot. It regarded humanity as a curiosity, a latecomer species clawing its way into the stars. Earth's diplomats were granted a single fragile seat at the Galactic Council, not out of respect, but to remind them of their smallness. They were told to observe, to learn, to bow. No one expected them to speak. When 3 women from Earth stepped forward to challenge a trade embargo strangling human colonies, the Empire reacted with the arrogance of gods faced by insects. On the imperial capital of Verada, before a crowd of billions and a network of broadcast drones, the 3 were charged with cultural defiance. Their words were not heard, their protests not recorded. Sentencing was immediate. Firestorms ignited around their execution posts, and their last images were transmitted to every world as a warning. This is the price of insolence. The crowd cheered, the council watched in silence, and Earth burned with rage. The Empire miscalculated. To them, the death of 3 envoys was a message. To humanity, it was a declaration of total war. Transmission archives captured the moment entire nations fell quiet, then erupted into fury. Old rivalries dissolved overnight. Governments that had distrusted one another for centuries signed their names to a single charter of retaliation. Politicians who had opposed military expansion now called for full mobilization. Within hours, Earth's orbital stations received encrypted orders to activate hidden shipyards buried in the asteroid belt, long rumored to be empty. Within days, experimental engines sealed in cold vaults on Luna were installed on destroyer frames. The Empire scoffed. Analysts within its intelligence core described humans as resource-poor, strategically naive, easily contained by blockade. Imperial broadcasts mocked Earth's squawking response. They showed images of Terran ships, outdated frigates, small carriers, and told their citizens no threat existed. But deep within humanity's networks, a different conversation unfolded. Artificial intelligence clusters stitched together contingency plans that had been prepared decades earlier, born of paranoia and foresight. Black-budget defense projects, once mothballed, roared back to life. Industrial reports recorded unprecedented numbers. Every factory on Earth retooled, every lunar smelter diverted to war production, every Martian dome turned into an assembly line. Private corporations surrendered patents to military councils, merging profit into survival. Cargo ships were stripped, reinforced, and armed. Civilian freighters became missile carriers. Even deep space mining rigs were modified into kinetic weapons, ready to hurl themselves at Imperial targets at near-relativistic speeds. Diplomatic channels carried one final ultimatum to the throne world: deliver those responsible to Earth for judgment, or face a war you cannot contain. The response was laughter transmitted in crystal clarity, followed by silence. Humanity understood then that this would not be a limited conflict. There would be no negotiations, no tribunal, no justice except the kind taken at gunpoint. And so, the Terran fleets launched, not for defense, but for conquest. Across the Sol system, acceleration alarms screamed as task forces burned toward jump corridors. Carrier hulls glowed as they left dry dock still unfinished, to be completed en route by robotic swarms. Recon drones fanned outward, mapping every Imperial patrol route with clinical precision. The first waves of encrypted transmissions from a unified fleet command set the tone. No retreat, no compromise, no prisoners taken who ordered or enabled the atrocity. Humanity moves as one. Reports from neutral observers showed astonishment. Species who had long feared the Empire watched humanity marshal strength in weeks that should have taken decades. Propaganda footage from Earth showed workers sleeping on assembly floors, volunteers lining up to join crews bound for near-certain death, children writing letters to parents deploying into the void. Morale was not manufactured. It was volcanic. The Empire's intelligence analysts noticed too late. In the Imperial Senate, voices warned that humans were behaving unlike any species ever crushed. But their warnings were dismissed as cowardice. The throne speaker, encased in gold and arrogance, issued a proclamation. The upstarts will kneel in chains, their homeworld quarantined, their colonies sterilized. Let them learn to spare. The broadcast spread across the stars, but on Earth it only hardened resolve. Weapons caches buried beneath Antarctic ice were unearthed. Hypersonic launchers appeared on Pacific atolls. Jovian shipyards began producing drone swarms in such numbers that Imperial scouts mistook them for sensor errors. A fleet that should not have existed, a fleet built on secrecy, stubbornness, and a refusal to bow, took shape before the Empire could react. Every projection said humanity would lose. Every computer model predicted swift annihilation. And yet, in that knowledge, humans smiled grimly and prepared to rewrite every projection. They would not sue for peace. They would not ask for mercy. They would make the Empire understand that setting 3 humans on fire had kindled something unquenchable. When the last diplomatic message was rejected and Imperial fleets moved to tighten their blockade, Earth answered with engines igniting from Mercury to Neptune. Carriers leapt from hidden ports. Cruisers rose from oceans like leviathans. Entire swarms of stealth drones vanished into deep space, broadcasting no signals, leaving no trails. The Empire had declared humanity beneath notice. Humanity would make them notice, in fire, steel, and silence. The Sol system glowed with the launch of 1,000 warships, unified not by conquest, not by greed, but by vengeance cold as the void. They sailed not under the flag of any single nation, but under a simple creed transmitted on every frequency. No one burns our people alive in lives. The first Imperial patrols engaged humanity expecting nothing but a brief exercise in target practice. Their confidence was centuries old, rooted in the Empire's history of crushing uprisings long before Earth had electricity. They did not know humans had been studying their tactics for decades, cataloging every maneuver, every supply route, every vulnerability gleaned from trade convoys and distant outpost rumors. When the first human task force emerged from stealth near the asteroid belt, they fought not with brute force but with unorthodox precision. The Imperial corvettes they ambushed never reported home. Across the galaxy, Imperial intelligence dismissed the incident as piracy. Yet hours later, another squadron vanished near Europa. Then another. The Empire sent larger formations, convinced that a single overwhelming strike would scatter humanity. But the Terrans refused to fight like anyone else. They mined gravity wells with autonomous torpedoes. They turned decommissioned freighters into ramming craft with fusion drives locked at full throttle. They deployed swarms of microdrones that devoured sensor rays and left enemy ships blind in open space. These tactics were costly, desperate, and wildly effective. Industrial reports inside the Sol system recorded output never before achieved. Civilian shipyards worked alongside military facilities in perfect coordination. Entire cities volunteered their labor. Entire nations emptied their treasuries into the war effort. On Mars, terraforming plants were converted to produce engine cores. On Luna, factories operating without pause constructed hull plating dense enough to shrug off the Empire's first-line weapons. In the gas giant colonies, automated swarms forged weapons faster than Imperial analysts could count. No faction asked for payment. No corporation demanded ownership. Survival had no shareholders. As Earth fleets pushed beyond the system, Imperial commanders began to take notice. Intercepted communications recorded their surprise. Humans were not retreating to defend their homeworld. They were advancing, striking supply depots, seizing jump corridors, dismantling relay stations, and leaving entire sectors cut off. The Empire deployed cruisers to trap these reckless primitives, only to find those same cruisers ambushed, their engines gutted by software worms uploaded into maintenance drones weeks earlier. Human cyber warfare AI infiltrated Imperial systems faster than any species had ever attempted. Signals went dark. Navigation beacons failed. Imperial fleets misfired on their own allies, convinced by false sensor feeds that they were under attack. By the 3rd month of war, the Empire's dismissive tone shifted to irritation, then to concern. A single human carrier group, designated Fleet X-17, penetrated 2 full defensive lines and destroyed an orbital shipyard around RHOSS Prime before self-destructing to avoid capture. Analysts noted a disturbing trend. Humans adapted in real time. Every battle fed data back into unified command, and every ship in the fleet updated its tactics within hours. The Empire fought the same war it had fought for 1,000 years. Humanity fought a new one every morning. Supplies for Earth's forces came from everywhere. Mining companies on Ceres donated entire payloads of rare metals. Independent colonies on Titan volunteered their transport ships, converted them into fuel tankers, and flew unarmed into battle zones to resupply Terran fleets. Civilians scoured scrapyards for anything usable. Even cultural institutions, universities, research labs, observatories, turned themselves into weapons programs, producing innovations the Empire could not predict. Within weeks, humanity had improved its own drives using captured Imperial cores, pushing ships faster and farther than before. The first Imperial counterstrike came as a full battle group of 2 dreadnoughts and 15 escorts entering the Sol system. They found nothing. Earth's fleets were already outside, raiding border worlds. The dreadnoughts were forced to burn fuel chasing shadows, only to return home to find their dockyards under human attack. When they finally engaged the Terran task force above Proxima's mining belt, they faced weapons they had never seen. Tungsten rods launched at near-relativistic speed, striking with the force of nuclear warheads, but leaving no radiation for sensors to track. The dreadnought shields failed. The escorts died first. The Empire salvaged only fragments of wreckage and a growing sense of dread. Galactic Council records captured whispers of fear among other species. Some minor powers secretly funnel humanity information, afraid of Imperial wrath, but hoping the upstart Terrans would succeed. Others closed their borders and prayed not to be noticed. Rumors spread. Humans were building weapons that bent physics. Humans were recruiting AI warlords. Humans were fighting like creatures who no longer feared death. The Empire tried to counter with propaganda, showing images of destroyed Terran frigates. But leaked battle logs told a different story. Humans were inflicting losses at a ratio unheard of in modern warfare. Imperial admirals escalated. They ordered planetary bombardments of human colonies, expecting to break morale. Instead, humanity's rage only grew. Mars declared every citizen a combatant. Orbital platforms self-destructed rather than be captured. Families evacuated in minutes through jump corridors, while military crews stayed behind to detonate cities before Imperial troops could land. Humanity refused to give the Empire any victory to celebrate. Captured Imperial tech accelerated everything. Within half a year, Terran engineers had replicated shield generators, miniaturized them, and installed them on strike craft. Missile systems were overhauled with alien targeting algorithms stolen mid-battle. Human AIs dissected Imperial encryption in hours that the Empire believed would take decades. The gap between Terran and Imperial technology closed, then reversed. The prey was becoming the predator. Even as victories mounted, human losses were staggering. Entire carrier groups sacrificed themselves to destroy a single Imperial battleship. Drone swarms numbering in the millions were expended in days. But Terrans accepted these losses as the price of vengeance. They recorded every name, every crew, every destroyed ship, and broadcast them back to Earth as heroes. Morale did not collapse. It solidified into something unbreakable. When Imperial High Command ordered a massive fleet to crush humanity once and for all, they underestimated again. The Terran response was not to meet the enemy head-on, but to vanish. Fleets scattered, went dark, and reappeared behind Imperial lines. Fuel convoys disappeared. Orbital foundries exploded in silent flashes. Communications hubs went offline without warning. What looked like chaos was coordinated precision. Every attack calculated to bleed the Empire's strength without offering a decisive battle. Humanity was teaching an empire of conquerors how to fear. Reports from neutral observers describe Imperial senators finally demanding an explanation. Why were these Terrans, so few in number and so new to stars, able to hold against the greatest power in the galaxy? No answer came. The Empire only tightened its grip, deploying ever larger formations, deploying experimental weapons of their own. Planet-killer plasma beams burned uninhabited moons in frustration. And still the humans came. By the third year of war, the Galactic Empire had learned to fear Terran silence. Their fleets no longer advanced with declarations of superiority. They advanced in formation, wary of traps. What once were arrogant hunting expeditions became desperate defensive deployments. They fortified their core worlds with fleets that blotted out stars. But humanity was already past the point of deterrence. The war had reshaped Earth and its colonies into something vast and relentless. Industry consumed every hour, every ounce of resource. Civilian populations lived in darkness to feed power grids. Entire economies ceased to exist as independent markets and merged into a single war state. No trade, no profit, no politics, only victory. The decisive offensive began without announcement. Across the galaxy, Terran fleets that had spent months striking and vanishing suddenly converged. Signals jammed, navigation beacons hijacked, and Imperial systems lit up with false alarms as 100 human task forces advanced simultaneously on every critical sector. Their goal was not destruction of worlds, but destruction of the Empire's ability to fight. Shipyards, command relays, fuel depots, all struck in a single coordinated wave. The first Imperial counterfleets arrived to meet them and found themselves disoriented, their targeting systems hijacked by human cyber warfare that rewrote protocols in mid-battle. Capital ships turned their guns on each other, convinced they were under attack from hidden enemies. Humanity's weapons were no longer crude. Hybrid shields and propulsion systems allowed Terran carriers to move faster than Imperial interceptors. Artillery platforms deployed kinetic slugs guided by adaptive AI that altered course mid-flight to bypass Imperial defenses. Drone swarms operated autonomously, acting as fleets in miniature, cutting through escort lines before heavier Terran craft delivered precision strikes. Losses were still high, but humanity no longer fought by attrition. Every sacrifice was deliberate. Every death purchased strategic ground. As Imperial borders collapsed, worlds long enslaved or taxed to ruin rose in revolt. Humanity did not arm them, but their actions sparked hope. The sight of Terran fleets smashing through Imperial strongholds without slaughtering civilians proved the Empire was not invincible. Imperial garrisons deserted rather than fight for a regime that could no longer protect them. The throne speaker, humiliated and enraged, ordered a mass fleet assembly at the Imperial capital. Hundreds of battleships, dreadnoughts, and carriers gathered to hold the heart of the Empire. It was the largest force ever assembled under one banner. Humanity did not meet them head-on. Instead, Terran fleets bypassed outer defenses using jump corridors mapped years in advance by stealth drones, appearing deep inside Imperial territory where no enemy was expected. From there, they advanced on the capital in waves, cutting supply lines and neutralizing defense stations with surgical strikes. When Imperial Armada finally engaged, it faced a war unlike any fought in its long history. Human fleets refused linear combat. They divided into dozens of fast-moving formations, striking from multiple vectors simultaneously, vanishing before counterfire could lock. Imperial commanders, trained in rigid doctrine, found themselves issuing orders that no longer mattered. Comms jammed, targeting scrambled, their formations shredded by precision kinetic impacts. Above the capital, the final battle raged for days. Imperial weapons burned human ships by the thousands, but Terran reinforcements arrived in endless streams. Every destroyed carrier was replaced by two more. Every lost strike wing transmitted battlefield data before annihilation, feeding humanity's fleet intelligence, making the next assault deadlier than the last. By the third day, Imperial defenses crumbled. Orbital fortresses fell silent, not from bombardment, but from power systems disabled by Terran infiltration. Dreadnoughts that once terrorized the galaxy drifted powerless, boarded by human marines who dismantled their command decks with ruthless efficiency. The palace of the throne speaker burned with him inside. No assassination team, no single hero, simply a fleet bombardment that disabled his defense grid, leaving to perish as his world fell. The Empire's command structure collapsed instantly. Remaining admirals fought on, but with no central authority. Their fleets fragmented, some retreating into deep space, others surrendering to Terran forces outright. Humanity did not exterminate. They broadcast terms of surrender not to the remnants of Imperial power, but to every subject world. The war was over if they chose it to be. No species would be enslaved again. No taxes would be collected at gunpoint. Humanity did not demand tribute or territory, only that the Empire ceased to exist as an engine of tyranny. Galactic Council records show chaos in the aftermath. Some feared humanity would replace the Empire with its own dominion. But Terran fleets withdrew from liberated systems after securing local defense and transferring power to native governments. Where Imperial soldiers were captured, those directly responsible for the burning of Earth's envoys faced trial. The rest were disarmed and released. The message was unmistakable. Humanity's wrath was terrible, but it was not blind. Reconstruction began even as the last battles died away. Human engineers remained to help rebuild shattered infrastructure on worlds freed from centuries of plunder. AI war councils were dismantled, their algorithms archived but not erased, a reminder of what humanity could become if provoked again. Throughout the galaxy, a new respect settled on every world. The knowledge that Earth's people would unite instantly when threatened, that their ingenuity turned weakness into power faster than any empire could comprehend, and that they fought not to conquer, but to ensure no one would ever burn their people alive again. On Earth, victory was not celebrated with parades. Cities still scarred by Imperial bombardments worked day and night to rebuild. Families counted their dead. Entire generations would bear the weight of war. But the war had also given humanity something rare, a unity born not of convenience but of conviction. The nations of Earth, once fractious and divided, had forged themselves into something greater, something that even the oldest empire in the galaxy could not break. In the closing transmissions of the unified fleet, one statement was sent to every world that could hear. We fought for 3 who burned, but we did not burn a galaxy in return. Remember that humanity is not merciful because it is weak. Humanity is merciful because it is strong. And with that, the war ended. The Empire was gone, its fleets shattered, its throne a ruin. Humanity returned home, not to rest, but to prepare. For in the silence of victory, Terran leaders understood that this would not be the last test. Somewhere in the endless dark, another power would rise, another hand would reach for Earth's throat. The galaxy would remember this war for 1,000 years, not as the war where humanity survived, but as the war where humanity chose to win on its own terms.